So, first of all, thanks for inviting me to share the word. It's a great thing to be able to, I don't know, just fellowship together in the details of life that God has given us. Whoops, let me see here. This has moved. You guys there? Okay. I'm
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
get this thing to go away that's in the middle of my screen. I'll just leave it there. All right. So what I wanted to share today is some things that God's been working on in my own heart and what we've been working through in fellowship and our ability to be able to take care of each other from God's point of view and the love of God. And this requires, at times, really drilling down past the concepts of the things of God and really seeing where truths and things need to be understood so that people can make their decisions out of love to change and be a blessing to themselves, to God, and each other. And this is something that over the years is a clear indication to me that I always need to continue to care more, love more, and grow more. If that wasn't available, then we wouldn't be asked to grow in the love of Christ. And there's a great example in the Gospel of Luke. Okay, let's go to chapter 15, please. And this just blew my mind, the way that I was able to understand the dynamics of what is going on in here, because it's all truth, it's all great. It is a parable, but there's a lot of lessons to be taught in this. And out of all the things that Christ ever spoke and did, God chose that this particular parable would be written down for our learning and for us to do. So I'm just going to read through this real quick. We're going to go through this, and I would call this taking care. Okay. So it says in verse 11, and he said, a certain man had two sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. I would say he had a plan. Okay. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed swine. And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him. And when he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? Right here is a serious, important turning point for his life. It says that he came to himself. So whatever he was thinking and seeking out to do, and whatever he did, it put him in a zone, it put him in a focus and a state of mind that obviously was very destructive, right? And he was pulled away from realizing the importance of what is good in his life and where this path has taken him. You might say that's pretty obvious, Casey, but when you're in the middle of living your life and making decisions, you can be caught in the middle of stuff. And before you know it, you're not doing the will of God in your life. And as you know, if we're called in the body of Christ to hold fellowship, to lead, whatever it is, if anybody looks to you for help and advice, we need to make sure that we're aware. We are aware of our own hearts and where our thinking is taking us. Okay. But this is the beginning of something that's really great for this guy. Verse 18, it says, I will arise and go to my father, and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. I would say he kind of came to himself and has realized reality of his situation with meekness, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. This is his plan. And he arose and came to his father. Isn't this interesting? His plan when he went to go leave the house, based on his perception of what living life would be like and should be like was certainly different as he became humbled by the realities of life. And he returned, he understood this structure of safety and provision and everything that his dad had for him his whole life. And he's starting to appreciate this, right? And he's humbled himself in relationship to the circumstances. This is what we need to do with ourselves when we look at our own life and when we're helping others. But we got to do it with ourselves first, or we don't know how to help other people. Look at the dynamics of that and make the best decisions. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion. There is a decision in that man's heart. He made a decision of compassion, not anger, not resentment, not anything that that situation would have engendered in the heart of that father. That is powerful. And ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. How many times do we feel that way with God? Or will? And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. He's repeating what he worked it out in his mind. He was not a man that looked in the mirror and saw what manner of man he was and then forgot. And then when he got home, he started ordering camels and everything to take him back. And, hey, Dad, what's going on? And put on these airs like everything's okay. He really humbled himself to the point of, okay, I'm not even worthy to be your son. I don't deserve this. I can work as now. Can you imagine back in that day what kind of tasks that you had the responsibilities of as a servant? And that boy would have known. They didn't have toilets like we have. So, if you're the servant, you got to go take those vessels of lesser honor, so to speak, and dump them somewhere. And, I'm sure that they didn't always hold their way on the way to where you were going, and that your footing wasn't always sure. Maybe you learned the hard way, but it was surely a low position of existence and servitude that no one else would do, that you would pretty much have to compel a servant to do. And he was willing to humble himself to the point of being able to do that. You got to taste the reality here. Verse 22, but the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring hither the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found, and they began to be merry. Oh, this is a great celebration. This is great. Doesn't heaven rejoice when one sinner repents? Boy, what a scene that must be. So why should it be any different if your heart is the same for the care and concern of the condition of that person? The condition of that person is more important than even what they did. You got to get in there and you got to take care of that. And then they're built up to be able to handle and face the things that are hard to face. Some people just need to be loved first. Now, in verse 25, it says, now his elder son was in the field. Now he's doing what he's supposed to do. And as he came and drew closer, nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. Well, apparently, the joy of the father that his son is now alive and has come back. And he's not only come back, he's come back with a meek heart. Wow, that's just what a thing to celebrate. That should be celebrated. He asked what these things meant. And he said unto him, thy brother is come, and thy father hath killed the fatted calf, because he hath received him safe and sound. The care and concern, oh, he's returned to us safe and sound. Anything could have happened to him leaving with such a wealth. And he was, now, compared to his father, who had a decision of love and the reaction of compassion in a very bad situation within a family, really, right? The son, his reaction is he's angry and would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. And we haven't even got to the real chewy caramel center yet. We're about to. And he answering said to his father, Lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment. Well, that I'm sure that might be debatable. No one's perfect, but maybe he maintained a loyalty that helped whatever they did in the field be prosperous, right? All that, he stayed with it, he worked. And yet thou never gavest me a kid that I might make merry with my friends. Whoa, stop right there. You can tell he's coming from the wrong place. He's not even concerned about his brother's condition and welfare here. Is this, in a lot of ways, is this not representative to families throughout history, especially sibling rivalry, and even in fellowships and ministries? If you don't think so, you might want to sit down and have a talk with God so that you can learn how to best navigate this thing with the love of God, because it exists. And this is a great example. This is a great example. Verse 30, but as soon as this thy son was come, which hath devoured thy living with harlots. Whoa, so see where his mind is? He's more on what he did than the condition of his life. The condition that a person is left in, whether they caused it or not, is more important than the sin itself. You can't help get redemption and accountability and true deliverance from someone if they don't have the love which gives them all the things that they need to then contend with the embarrassment and the whole thing. He's not even paying attention that his brother humbled himself. And another interesting point here is that he's the older brother. I'm an older brother of 4. I was always charged with the responsibility of protecting them. And it doesn't say anywhere here that his brother went and visited him, but his brother seems to have knowledge that his little brother spent his money on harlots. So there's some kind of knowledge that he knew what he did with his money. And so without being concerned for where his life will lead him in that, he just made a decision before that. I'm going to resent that. He's not doing right. He's not doing the word. He's not obeying. This is crazy. This is a waste. All this kind of stuff. Stuff that happens in life and within families all the time. It can happen between kids and parents, all of it. All right. This is an incredible account of the dynamics of a person's heart and what they go through and how they respond with care or not, right? And it says, for this thy brother, it says, it was meet, verse 32, that we should make merry and be glad, for this thy brother was dead and is alive again and was lost and is found. So let's go back a little bit here. And it says in verse 29, and he answering said to his father, Lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet thou never gavest me a kid that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as, now check this out, use a little usage of the word, as soon as thy son, he's actually just, he's thy son. He hasn't even acknowledged him as a brother. Look what unforgiveness and resentment and jealousy and the whole tree of that produces. At a time where his brother needed the most love and understanding, he's not getting it from his brother. Thank God he's getting it from his father, somebody, right? But isn't that interesting? Thy son. Wow. And then look what his dad, how he takes care of that even. Look how this love and care, he's not turning on the older brother for the hardness of his heart. He takes care of this and speaks to it. He says, and the latter end of it says, verse 32, it was meet that we should make merry and be glad, for this thy brother. Look at that. He didn't say my son like the son. He said, thy brother, your brother. That's your brother. Your brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. Man, when you say your brother, what does that speak to your heart? Now, it's a parable, I do believe. So, was it a true story? Exactly. But are those not the dynamics of human interaction throughout the history of life as we've known it? It sure is. It sure is. This takes a preparation of the heart to respond with compassion and care, and to see the most important thing in every situation, right? Help is more important than winning people. Otherwise, it's religion, right? The point of view of the brother is even more insidious on the inside than what appears on the outside. Those little phrases, thy son, boy, they can go by fast when you read, but does it not speak unlimited amounts of just showing the hardness of the heart? Now, he grew up in the same house as his younger brother, and experienced that father didn't just all of a sudden become unconditional love out of nowhere. That heart had to already be in shape for that. It had to already be put together and guided in that manner to respond in such a manner. So maybe the older brother needed a little work in that regard. And when it hit home, it was quite a challenge for him. What should have been the brother's response? He should have been just as excited if he had care and concern for him. I'm not saying he didn't love the brother, but look at what resentment gets in the way of. And then later on, if it's cleaned up and cleared and you're convicted for that lack of love and care, then you got to deal with the fact you showed such lack of love and care in a situation where in your heart you want to love. And we've got to know how to deal with that. And we got to be able to help teach other people to deal with that as well. Because that's life, that's real. So, the most loving thing to do would be to help the brother and share in whatever he has, right? So if you look at verse 10, it's of the same chapter 15, it says, likewise, I say unto you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner that repenteth. If your response to other people is not the same joy and response as heaven would have, you don't love enough and you don't care enough. I don't love or care enough if that's not my response. It doesn't mean I absolve myself or others from what's going on. We can get to the bottom of things if need be. But man, first things first, minister to people's hearts. The condition of their heart is more of a concern, right? Of course it is. So, you got to be in consistency with good ground, right? And Jesus Christ talks about the seed that falls on all this different ground. A good and pure heart is that ground. What is that good and pure heart? Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Yeah. Yes. This is a lot more precise in the dynamics of life, instead of just spouting off things. Not saying we do that, but we want to take care to be precise and in care of an individual first. Okay. And in chapter 13 of verse 1, it says, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity, I am becoming a sounding brass, a tinkling cymbal. And though I have the gift, he has all these things, right? We can just go down these things, can do all things, know all things, all this kind of stuff. I am nothing without agape, right? So if you have all these things and all the oracles of God, all this stuff, God doesn't count it as squat if it's not motivated by love. How do you know you're motivated by love? Do you show the care and concern first for the condition and then do what you can by the guidance of God to help mend that wound and that pain and that condition so that they can live on and be re-resurrected in that category of life, whatever you want to call it? That's how you know. Otherwise, as far as I'm concerned, this is the responsibility of having that, of saying, hey, this is what God says. This is what his word says. That's why it's important we let the word define what things are, and then we act accordingly, right? So good ground puts you in the exact same perception as God, right? And your priority should be the heart of God. If we're not concerned with the condition of the human being, we don't love and we don't care enough. I can't say it enough, right? And then we are as a foot out of joint instead of words seasoned with salt, spoken in due time, in due season, the exact remedy for the condition of that person's heart, so they can rise up with believing and encouragement to then take on the rest of the mind of Christ to see it through to good fruit, right? To good fruit. So, I would have to say that if we go to Colossians 1:8, let's hit Colossians 1:8. This is a great, God is just so awesome with his word. He's so precise. He's so accurate in the very details and dynamics of life. And here it says, well, let's go first at verse 7, right? As you also learned of Epaphras, our dear fellow servant, who is for you a faithful minister of Christ, who also declared unto us your love in the Spirit. This love is agape love, okay? Interesting, is that it's a fixed position. And this word spirit, a rational soul, a mental disposition. It's also used, depending on the context, right? The Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit. But this particular one is translated a rational soul, a mental disposition. And isn't that something that you have an opportunity to make a decision in love or resentment or whatever? That comes from a rational mind. Remember, it's not what goes into a man that defiles him, it's what comes out. Because that's what's been there. You make a decision based on what's been built in your mind and how you're going to respond to it. I know we've heard this a million times, but we're not supposed to get lost in the details of it, and I can't hear it enough. I can't hear it enough to know how to love and get right to the root of things. And the way you do it is you just got to love and show the care and concern for the person more than the sin or the situation. From that springboard, will you be tapped into Christ, receiving what you are grafted into that the other person can be nourished with. That is a confidence that you're conscious before God as you live in love, in the Spirit, fixed, deliberately in love, care and concern for the person. God will give you what you need to, and that will be met. The need will be met. Okay, it'll be met, absolutely. Let's go to John. We can kind of close in John. 1 John, I might add. 1 John, if I get there too. Chapter 2, verse 8 says, again, a new commandment I write unto you, which thing is true in him and in you, because the darkness is past and the true light now shineth. He that saith he is in the light and hateth his brother is in darkness even until now. This word hate means to love less. To love less. Certain situations require all the love you got. All of it. All of it. All of it. He, verse 10, that loveth his brother abideth in the light, and there is none occasion of stumbling in him. But he that hateth his brother is in darkness, and walketh in darkness, and knoweth not whither he goeth, because that darkness hath blinded his eyes. That parable of the prodigal son, the older son, this is literally the example, the negative example of that. Okay? Right there, right there. In chapter 3, verse 8, it says, He that committeth sin is of the devil, for the devil sinneth from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. In this context, in this situation, anything that would take you away from the care and concern of everyone in your sphere of influence and living is the work of the devil. God would never take you away from the care of an individual, not in your own thoughts and not in the circumstances of life. So it says here, for this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. Whosoever is born of God doth not commit sin, for his seed remaineth in him, and he cannot sin, because he is born of God. In this, the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil. Whosoever doeth not righteousness is not of God, neither he that loveth not his brother. For this is the message that you heard from the beginning, that we would love one another. Verse 24, and he that keepeth his commandments dwelleth in him, and he in him, and hereby we know that he abideth in us by the Spirit which he hath given us. Okay? So if we're concerned with the condition of people, then we love enough. We care enough. Okay? That's the bar. That's the measure. And it's the highest bar available. God showed, when Christ was hanging on the cross, not after it all was all done, he's like, now that I think about it, forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing. It was in the height of the worst of it all. You would think it would be enough to say, forgive them, Father. I take that. But in addition to that, he said, for they know not what they do. You want to talk about being able to look at the human condition, understand it, and have compassion with it, even when that human condition is doing what they're doing to him. If that's not the epitome of agape love, lived out an example to us, it's not without our understanding to see. It happened. It's written. It's there. And one other thing to remember is that these wonderful truths, it's not the ink on the scrolls, it's not the etchings in the stone, it's not the arrangement of the stars that tells his word, that it tells his word, but it doesn't think for us, it doesn't receive for us, it doesn't act out that for us, and it doesn't grow in love for us. It takes a detailed, steady, faithful, all the fruit of the Spirit, the entire tree, to stick with that so that the dynamics of life produce the growth of love that's required. Shane and I talk about how it's unconceivable to us that we were able to love each other any more than when we first got married, but it's true. And that's because when you just apply this to the dynamics of life and see it through, there's no other place for that. The care and concern, what can you build in this life with God and others, if that's your first and foremost thing? So now we're not fighting with each other, we're fighting for each other. How about that? Talk about taking care, right? So, that's what I wanted to share today.